Thanks everybody for joining the webinar today. So if you're looking for long-term care planning at 60 plus, then you are in the right place. We're going to give just a few minutes for everybody to trickle into the webinar. So everyone just sit tight and we'll get started in just a minute or two. All right. Once again, for those of you just entering the webinar, we are, if you're here for long-term care planning at 60 plus, you're in the right place. We're just going to give it about another half a minute to let people trickle into the room, and then we're going to get started. Right. Thanks everybody for joining the webinar today. I am Mike Monteforti, and today we're going to be talking about long-term care planning for folks that are ages 60 plus. So a little bit of an agenda just to quickly hit what we're going to be going over today. So we'll have a quick intro. We're going to talk about why planning matters, why it's very, very important to have a plan when it comes to long-term care. We're going to talk about what long-term care is. What does that term even mean? Because there's so many misnomers out there about it and so much misinformation. We're going to talk about the three ways that you can pay for long-term care. And there are only three, and we're going to hit all three, and we're going to discuss those in some detail. We're going to then talk about advice for next steps. How do we get a plan together in case we need long-term care or a family member needs long-term care? You'll find that planning early, planning ahead is really the key here when it comes to this stuff. And so we're going to really be able to tell you how to get started. And we're going to leave some time at the end for some questions, make sure that I answer questions that anybody has. So we'll make sure we leave some time to do that as well. So jumping in about me. So again, my name is Mike Monteforti. I'm an estate planning and elder law attorney. I've been doing this for almost 25 years now. There's a picture there of my family, my wife Jill, my son Mikey, and my daughter Gabriella. Uh, they are a little bit older now than they are in that picture. I think they were in high school in that picture, and they're in college now. I keep saying I need to change it because they'd be mortified if they saw it and knew that I was using a picture of them in high school. But either way, that's them. I've written 3 books about estate planning, long-term care planning, and business succession. And I am the creator of some proprietary products and trusts that we use to help people protect their assets. So let's jump right in and start talking about long-term care. And we want to make sure that when we discuss this, when we talk about planning, we make sure that our clients know, hey, you are the hero of this story. And why is that? Well, that's because we want you to feel secure in any plan that you put together, and we'll talk about that. And planning for long-term care is really a gift that you give to your family. And that's why you're the hero of this story when you put a plan together. All right. So people that come to see us to talk about this stuff have a number of different wants. Okay. You want to stay in control. You don't want to lose control of your assets. You don't want anyone making decisions for you. You want to protect your spouse. You want to protect your home, your assets, and your legacy. As I think everyone would agree, no one ever says they want to go to a nursing home, right? If I ask the audience, hey, who wants to go to a nursing home? No one's going to say yes. Everyone's going to say well, that we want to stay home. But then when I ask, how do you plan to do that? Nobody has an answer. And that's what we're gonna help you with today. And for those of us that might not be ready to think about long-term care for ourselves, but we might be thinking about long-term care for either a parent or a grandparent, again, we want to help our parents or grandparents stay home. I see lots of clients that will come in and tell me, I promised my mom or dad that I would never send them to a nursing home, but the care that they need has gone past, what I'm able to give, and I don't see myself as having any choice. And this is always the case when we have folks that haven't planned. All right. For those of us that, that want to stay home, you need a plan in order to get there. And we're going to walk through how that works. So let's talk about the threat that we all face. The truth is that 70% of people over age 65 will need some form of long-term care in their lifetimes, and that number is going up. All right, with the modern medicine, people are living longer, and that number creeps up a little bit every year. Right now, here in Massachusetts, the average nursing home costs $132,000 a year, and that's just an average. That's not even the expensive ones, okay? That's just an average of what they cost. Here in Massachusetts, we are among the highest in the entire country when it comes to our long-term care costs. We usually come in number 2 or 3. Alaska is always at the top of that list. It's some supply and demand issue for them, and then we usually come in either second or third. The alternative to that coin is in-home care. Those of us that want to stay home instead of going into long-term care, well, in-home care is very expensive. And if we haven't figured out how we're going to pay for it, if we haven't made a plan to do that, then a lot of times we're stuck with facility-based care because we haven't set up a mechanism to allow us to stay home. And the truth is, the sad truth is that most people just don't plan until it's too late. So let's talk about what happens without a plan. And I'm going to use an example that's very close to home for me. I'm going to talk about my grandparents. That's my grandparents in the picture there, my grandmother Anne and my grandfather Al. They are the reason that I got into estate planning and elder planning almost 25 years ago now. My grandfather got sick, started showing signs of dementia, got worse and worse over time, to the point where my grandmother could not take care of him herself anymore and came to me looking for help. And so I got into estate and elder planning originally to help them. And that's how I realized that that's what my calling was, and it's what I was put on this earth to do. So let's talk about them, because by the time my grandmother came to see me, it was already too late to pre-plan. My grandfather needed the care right away, and my grandmother wasn't far behind. She wouldn't admit it at the time, but she wasn't in the greatest physical shape either. She was a cancer survivor. I think she weighed 100 pounds soaking wet. And so the truth is, both of them really needed some form of long-term care. It really wasn't safe for either of them to be in the home alone anymore. But we did not pre-plan. The two of them moved into assisted living. Uh, Beautiful facility, brand new, extremely expensive. Okay. And they paid month after month after month. At one point, my grandfather's dementia progressed to where he could no longer be in the same room with my grandmother at night. He had to go to a memory care unit. And so then they were paying for 2 different units, one for him, one for her. My grandfather passed away first. My grandmother lived about another year or so after my grandfather. She passed away at age 93. But at the time that she passed, she had 3 months worth of care left as far as money she had in the bank. And that's it. If she had lived for another 3 months, we would have had no choice but to move her out of the beautiful facility that she was in and move her to a Medicaid facility. When she passed away, so she was spared having to do that, but it happens very frequently. So what can happen without a plan is we see all of our money, poof, disappear, paid to a long-term care facility, everything we've worked for our entire lives. And a lot of times there's nothing left to leave to our kids or grandkids because it's all gone off to the nursing home or long-term care facility. So let's look at the flip side of that. what happens with a plan, because the situations are very, very different. If we've got a family that comes in to see us to put a long-term care plan together when everyone is healthy, we've got many, many more options available to us in order to help them. So while, yes, it is possible to do what we call crisis planning, coming to see us when the care is needed now, we have many more tools at our disposal when we plan ahead while everyone is still healthy. Folks in this example created what we call a Medicaid trust years earlier, and those trusts can be used to protect their home and their savings from long-term care costs and Medicaid liens. We can set up a plan to make sure that uh, spouses, husband or wife can receive care at home for as long as possible without having to go into a nursing care facility. And then if we get to a point where someone does need a nursing facility, we have options. And those are all things that we can do with a plan by planning ahead. So let's get into a little bit about what is long-term care. And as I said earlier, this is something where there's tons of misinformation out there. It can be very confusing, and long-term care can mean a lot of different things. So to start off, it's not just nursing homes. People hear the term long-term care and they just go straight to thinking nursing home. But long-term care can also apply to what we call in-home care. It's when someone needs a little bit of extra help in the home, and having that little bit of extra help can keep the person at home so that they don't have to go to a nursing home. So long-term care refers to both of those things. When we're talking about in-home care, it usually starts with basic tasks. It's the nature of diseases like Alzheimer's or dementia. They tend to start off slow and get worse over time. They are progressive diseases. They go forward only. They don't go back. And so it often starts with small tasks, someone coming in to give us a little bit of help so that we've got the care that we need in our house. But things can snowball. All right. All of a sudden, we can see a big jump in the progression of a disease like Alzheimer's, dementia, or even certain physical ailments that can be exacerbated by a fall or a stroke or even an illness like a pneumonia. Very, very often, I'll see clients whose mom or dad is really doing okay. Then they'll have a fall and never be the same after that. We just see this big jump in the progression of the disease. Without a plan, families have to scramble to figure out what to do because we've got nothing in place. Someone now needs some form of care. We're not sure what to do with them. We haven't explored long-term care in the home. We don't know whether that's something that's going to work. And so again, people jump straight to looking at facility-based care when we, just aren't sure of what our options are. And we're gonna walk a little bit through that today. So we're going to talk about uh, what we call our foundational four at my firm. Okay, and it's going to address the four main documents that we use when it comes to putting an estate plan together. We're going to put a survey into the chat box. If you see it pop up, you can go ahead and answer it. It's going to ask you about how much planning you have done already, if any. So you're going to see that pop up shortly in your chat, and you can go ahead and answer that while I talk to you about the foundational four. So the four documents that make up the central piece of any estate plan. We start with a will. Last will and testament. Most people know what that is or what that means. It's a document that says where our stuff's going to go if we pass away. The other thing that a will can do is it can allow us to name guardians. If we got to the point where we can't make decisions for ourselves, we can name guardians for ourselves, and we can also name guardians for our children if we've got kids under 18 and something happens to us. Second part of our foundational four is a trust. And this is where the magic happens in an estate plan. A trust can be used to avoid probate. Contrary to popular belief, a will alone does not help us avoid probate. If all I have is a will and no trust, that will needs to be probated. And it's up to our executor to take the will to the probate court and jump through all the hoops that are required to navigate the absolute mess of what the probate court is right now. But with a trust, we can avoid that. We can avoid probate, we can exercise control over our assets, and we can make sure that our assets go where we want them to go if something happens to us. And while a will and a trust kind of kick in when we pass away, there are other documents that are part of our foundational four that kick in if we get disabled. All right, so the first of those documents is called a power of attorney. This is a document that we use to designate someone to make financial decisions for us if we can't do so for ourselves. If I can't make decisions for myself financially, who's going to step in and do that? If I have a power of attorney, I choose the person that I want to step in and fill that role, whether it's my wife or one of my kids. Without that, someone has to go to the court and the judge is going to decide who's going to make those decisions for me. And that's not what we want. We want to decide for ourselves. The last piece of our foundational four is what we call a healthcare proxy. This is where we designate someone to make healthcare or medical decisions for us if we can't do so for ourselves. So if my illness or whatever I'm dealing with makes it so that I am not competent to make healthcare decisions for myself anymore, the healthcare proxy again lets us name someone to do that. And doing so avoids our family from having to go to the court, get permission to make decisions for us, and having the judge decide who the best person is. So having a plan is how we maintain control. So moving on, like I said at the beginning, there are three ways to pay for long-term care, whether we're talking about in-home care or facility-based care. I'm going to list out all three, and then we're going to talk in more detail about each. So the first way to pay for long-term care is out of pocket, using your money to pay for your long-term care until you don't have anything left. And unfortunately, this was the option we were left with for my grandparents. Because they didn't have a plan set up ahead of time, they were forced to pay out of pocket, and their entire life savings basically went to long-term care. Number two is paying for long-term care through insurance. And there are a couple of different insurance options that are available. We're going to talk about those in a minute. We'll get into more detail on the insurance aspect and the insurance way to pay for long-term care. And the third way to pay for long-term care is through the Medicaid program. Medicaid is a federal program, all right? It's a national program used to provide long-term care benefits for those who qualify, but every state administers the Medicaid program in its own way, and every state has an agency that administers that federal Medicaid program. Here in Massachusetts, that program is MassHealth. So MassHealth runs the federal Medicaid program in Massachusetts and makes determinations about who is eligible and who is not eligible for long-term care benefits through Medicaid. In New Hampshire, it's the Office of Health and Human Services, but every state has a separate entity who's tasked with administering the program, and they all do it in their own way. It's very nuanced, and it differs state by state. So let's talk about option one, paying out of pocket. Like I said, this is the worst way to go. This is what happened to my grandmother and grandfather, using all of their life savings to pay for long-term care. Decent facility costs between $11,000 to $15,000 a month, and that's just for a decent facility. For a really nice facility, you're going to pay more. If we are looking at in-home care versus facility-based care, those costs tend to run around $30 to $40 per hour. It gets more expensive based on how specialized the care is. The more specialized the care, the higher the hourly cost. And then the more care that you need equals more hours that you need, and that drives the cost up and up and up. Most people who are paying for this out of pocket go broke in a couple of years, 2 to 3, you know, 3 if you're lucky. All right, if you're a multi-millionaire, maybe you've got longer time, but average American, 2 to 3 years, and they're going to be out of cash. The second option is through insurance. And one type of insurance that can be used to pay for long-term care is called long-term care insurance. Most people don't have long-term care insurance. Most people that do have it got it through an employer or got it many, many years ago. If you do have long-term care insurance, go ahead and type yes into the chat. There may be no one in the audience that has long-term care insurance, but there may be a few of you. If you do have long-term care insurance, you can go ahead and type it into the chat. The issue with long-term care insurance is it's not a bad thing. It's great if you have it. If you were try to get it now, it's very expensive. In fact, the costs of long-term care in Massachusetts are so high that most insurance companies won't even write long-term care insurance policies in Massachusetts anymore. There are very, very few companies that will even provide it in Massachusetts. If you were to try and get a policy now, it's going to be very expensive. If you're after age 65, it's most likely you're not going to qualify anyway. And the other issue with long-term care insurance is they have limits, especially policies that you may have gotten many, many years ago. They have a daily cap, an annual cap, and an overall cap. So they have all different ways of limiting how much money the insurance company pays out in long-term care benefits. So while it's not a bad thing, know that most of the time these policies pay a portion of our long-term care, but the coverage that most people have does not cover their entire long-term care expense. All right. The other policies that can be used for long-term care are what we call hybrid policies, and they are based on life insurance. It's basically a type of life insurance policy that allows you to access your death benefit, even though you're not dead, if you need to go into long-term care. So essentially, you can access your death benefit early, use up to your death benefit amount to pay for your long-term care. And then if there is any money left when you pass away, that money is going to go to your beneficiaries. I like these types of policies much better than the traditional long-term care insurance. All right, but they're still limited. Okay, they are, again, not a bad thing to have. They make up part of a plan for how we're going to pay for long-term care, but they typically don't pay for all of it. So you can't think that just because you have one of these policies that you're set. Most of the time, you're not. The third way to pay for long-term care, again, is through that Medicaid program administered here in Massachusetts through Mass Health. Now, Mass Health will pay for nursing home care, right? Care in a skilled nursing facility. And they will also pay for in-home care. And there are some rules that go along with it. The in-home care has to be less expensive than nursing home care, and the in-home care has to be necessary to keep you out of a nursing home. And the way that Mass Health looks at it is they'll say, well, if it's cheaper for us to pay some money for in-home care to help keep them home than what it would cost us for moving into a facility and paying for that, let's pay for the care to keep them home. It's going to be less money, less of a cost to Mass Health. And so contrary to what a lot of people believe or are aware of, Mass Health will pay for in-home care. But both the in-home care program and facility-based care have strict income and asset limits. And this is where having a plan comes in. All right. If you've got too much money, put simply, you can't qualify for these long-term care benefits. And so what Mass Health Medicaid wants you to do is spend down your money. Spend down your money until you go broke. And then once you're broke, go back and apply for Mass Health Medicaid. However, if we plan ahead, we can protect assets, remove them from your balance sheet, most of the time using trusts, and make it so that you can still qualify for long-term care in-home or facility-based, but still have assets like your home and savings. So some real quick Mass Health long-term care benefits. Again, they have strict financial requirements. The asset limit for someone going into a long-term care facility is $2,000. That's all that you can have in your name, 2,000 bucks. If I am going into a long-term care facility and my wife is staying home, she's allowed to keep a little bit more money. It's around $157,000 and change. That amount goes up every year, but it only goes up by a little bit, or I might go up a couple of $1,000 per year. And if we've got over that amount in assets, the message you get from Mass Health is go spend your money. When you get down to these asset levels, then come back and apply. We don't want to know you until then. Go spend your money and pay out of pocket. And again, crisis planning tools do exist, but they aren't as effective. And when we plan ahead, we've got a lot more, tools in our toolbox that we can use to help protect your assets. For example, trusts that we use to help protect your assets require 5 years to be effective. All right, meaning we've got to put assets into trust 5 years before we're in need of that long-term care. And so this is the reason why planning ahead is so important and why crisis planning is more limited. If someone needs the care now, this ship has sailed. We've lost that 5 year window, all right, because Mass Health has what's called a 5 year look back, and they can use that to basically invalidate transfers that we've made to trusts. So you need to do it 5 years out. You need to do it while you're healthy. So let's talk about reasons why people don't plan, why we don't plan ahead. Because I hear different things all the time, but most common reasons I hear from people: I'm healthy now. I don't want to worry about long-term care because I'm healthy now. That's exactly when you should worry about long-term care, because again, the most effective tools are done when we're healthy. I don't want to give up control. I don't want anyone to uh, be in control of my assets but me. Well, the law has evolved over the years to where we can protect your assets, but still keep you in control, still keep you in the driver's seat, and provide you the protection from long-term care without you having to give control up to anybody. We'll figure it out later. That's a biggie. This was the one that my grandparents really used. They were old school Italians, very superstitious, and the thought about planning for their passing or for long-term care was a no-no. You just didn't talk about it. You didn't discuss it. The old Italian superstition was we don't talk about this. And what happens then is, again, we don't discuss it until the planning is needed, and by then it's too late and we're stuck with crisis planning only. Irrevocable trust sounds scary. Well, irrevocable used to be a scary or dirty word because of the way that the law was many, many years ago. You really were giving up control over certain assets. But again, the law has evolved. It's not like that anymore. Irrevocable does not have to mean out of control. When irrevocable trusts are done right by someone that knows what they're doing, you can maintain control of your assets. You can stay in your home. You can determine who's going to be the trustees of your trusts. You can still collect rental income if you've got rental property. You can keep control of your money and your house with protections built in for you. So there's no reason to be scared of that word irrevocable. Not anymore. You may have heard horror stories years ago about people that put property into trust into an irrevocable trust and couldn't get it back, or risk getting kicked out of their own home. Those worries don't need to exist anymore if this stuff is done properly. So the real reasons, why should we plan now? Again, why not wait? Why should we plan ahead? Well, again, if you want to stay home and not end up in a nursing home, you need to plan ahead in order to be able to do that. If you want your spouse to be okay if something happens to you, especially if one of you is a primary breadwinner in the family and something happens to you, what's then going to happen to your spouse? Well, we want to make sure that your spouse is okay if something happens to you. Another big one, and this was huge for my grandparents and for me too. You don't want to be a burden for your kids. The last thing that I want is my kids having to come and take care of me to keep me out of a nursing home. I want them off living their lives, getting married, having kids of their own, doing things with their family, taking their kids to baseball practice. I do not want them taking care of me. And for folks that don't plan, it's very often left to the kids to step in and take care of mom and dad. And it was something my grandparents definitely didn't want, and I know that I don't want. The other thing is we want to have choices. We don't want to have panic and be scrambling to find immediate care, and planning ahead can help us uh, put together different options so that no one is faced with having to panic when that time comes. Here at my firm, we have what we call a peace of mind plan, and it's made up of 3 steps. The first step is booking your free strategic planning session. It's my office's version of a consult. We don't call it a consult because most consults done by other law firms are very general and basic. You don't get much value from them. We provide a lot of value at this meeting. It's a one-on-one with one of our attorneys, typically me. And that session is something where we guarantee that you'll get value from. It's a meeting that typically does have a charge associated with it, but for anyone that attends one of our webinars, you get that strategic planning session for free. So that's step one. When you come in for that session, we'll talk about step two. You get a personalized long-term care strategy from us, where we're talking about how to protect your assets, what we can do, ways that we can get you qualified for long-term care through Mass Health Medicaid so that if you need it down the road, it's going to be available to you. And we've protected your assets in the meantime. All right. And then step three, we put that plan into action. We can protect your home, protect your savings, protect your loved ones. And that's why I said that a plan really is a gift that you're giving to your family, because your kids don't need to step in and become your caregivers. And what ultimately happens is the kids can get burnt out trying to deal with their own lives and taking care of us, or uh, our medical needs get beyond the point that our kids are able to help us. If they're not trained nurses or doctors, our medical needs get past or get beyond what they're able to do. And we're forced to end up in a facility anyway, even though they promised us we weren't going to go there. So again, planning ahead helps us prevent that. People always ask what it costs, right? What does long-term planning costs? Well, I will tell you, good planning done by expert level attorneys is not cheap, but the alternative, crisis planning, costs a lot more. I've yet to ever see an estate plan or a long-term care plan that costs more than what it costs to be in a long-term care facility for a couple of months. Again, remember, $132,000 a year in a nursing home, similar costs for in-home care versus putting a one-time plan together. Most clients that come in to see us about this tell us they wish they had done this sooner. And you can actually see the difference from when they walk into the office to the way they walk out. They walk in stressed. They're carrying this load on their shoulders, whether it's for themselves or a parent or a spouse, regarding long-term care. They're panicked. They're not sure what to do. And when I sit them down and say, listen, I'm going to be able to help you, and here are some things we can do, they leave the office just visibly lighter because they've shifted that load that they were carrying, shifted it over to us, and they walk out with a much lighter step than how they walk in when they see the different things that we can do to help. So taking control is a big part of this. The way, again, to get started is to book your free strategic planning session. Again, there's normally a charge for that. It's $450 for that session, but for anyone that attends our webinar, we do extend that session to you for free. And I guarantee you that you will get value out of that session. Even if you determined at the end of that session that we're not a fit to work together and you're not going to hire us, you will get value from that session. Okay. The other thing that we provide to anyone that's attended one of our webinars is you get $500 off the cost of your plan. That's because you've listened to me talk about this stuff, you get some familiarity with the options, and it allows us to really hit the ground running when you come in for your session. Instead of having to get into great detail again about the basics, you've heard that already, and we can really get started on working on a personalized plan for you. And so because of that, we offer $500 off the cost of your estate plan. However, the key is you need to book your strategic planning session today. My calendar fills up very, very quickly, but we do reserve time for our webinar and seminar attendees to have room on my calendar. I save spaces for you all, for the folks that attend the webinar. I save spaces on my calendar for you, but again, it does fill up super fast. And beyond today, I'll be booked way out. So the way that you get that $500 off and the free session is to book your appointment today. And when we get to the end, I'll show you how to do that. And just remember, you don't have to do this alone. Whether it's us or it's another attorney, there are resources out there to help you. One of the best parts of my day, best parts about what I do is, again, having people come into the office stressed and watching them walk out the door stress-free. So you don't have to be alone in this. You just have to find the right partner to help you navigate these waters. So I want to take a minute now to offer up some Q&A, answer any questions that you folks have. And then from there, we'll get into how to book a session for those of you that are ready to take control, take some action, and get this done. But before we get to that, I want to answer any questions that folks have. So if you have a question, you can go ahead and type it into the chat box. I'm going to keep my eye on it here and watch for any questions that come up. And I want to make sure that I go ahead and answer those. And then, like I said, we'll move on and we'll talk about how to book a session for anybody that's ready to do this. So if you have a question, please go ahead and type it into the chat. Okay, so Chris has asked the question. I saw that you were admitted to the New Hampshire bar, so I assume you can help us folks in Nashua. So yes, Chris, absolutely. So I am licensed in 3 states, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and New York. For people that are far from us and don't want to make the drive to come all the way to the office, we do offer Zoom appointments. We prefer that people that are able to come in do come in, because a face-to-face meeting is always better. But the alternative, if again folks are just too far, can't get here, we can do our meetings through Zoom. Next question: what happens if you've lowered your assets to under 2K, but the 5-year look back finds more money? Well, Rick, it's a great question, and it happens all the time. And sadly, you probably know the answer. If they find more money, you get disqualified from Mass Health, and they tell you to turn around, go spend your money until you get back down to the asset limit, and then apply again. One of the things that Mass Health is doing now is what we call annual reviews, where they're making you every year provide bank statements and other proof of your assets, so that you're showing them annually that you're down to the asset limit. And you bet if you go over, they will cancel your benefits and make you spend down and then start again. Let's see. Spencer has asked, how specific is this approach to Massachusetts? We may retire to other states. Is this applicable? So even though every state has its own nuance when it comes to the way that the Medicaid program is administered, there are universal truths because it's a federal program. And the approach that we take can work in any state, but what changes are those asset limits. So if you remember when I said an individual in Massachusetts can have 2,000 in their name, spouse staying home can have around 157,000 and change. That's different for each state. And the level of in-home care that they provide is different for each state as well. But the tools that we use, the plans that we put in place are going to be applicable anywhere. So let's see. Next question from Julie. Do you see less funding and rule changes in Medicaid that will make the nursing home situation even tougher? Well, I will tell you, sadly, again, the answer to that is absolutely yes. Okay. There are concerted efforts, especially here in Massachusetts, to increase the scrutiny of mass health applications for long-term care. In fact, if you can probably look it up, the governor, there's a quote from her from last year saying how many hundreds of new caseworkers were hired with the express purpose of removing people from the mass health program that the government feels shouldn't be on it. So they are making a concerted effort to deny benefits. So unfortunately, it's not getting better, it's getting worse, which makes it even more important to plan ahead. Let's see, Tim asked, we have a trust. My parents are in assisted care and are running out of money. We need to move them back home. Can you help us get Mass Health for in-home care? Trust was set up 13 years ago, tapping money from the trust to pay for their care. So we can apply for in-home care, but Mass Health does what they call a screening. It's where they do an assessment to determine how many hours of care a week that person needs. And it has to come out that the cost for them of in-home care is cheaper than facility-based care. If you need 24-hour care in the home, that's going to be more expensive than facility-based care. And Mass Health is going to say, no, 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 we're not going to cover that. We'll cover facility-based care for you. So if they're financially eligible, we do mass health applications for people. They're 99% of the time initially denied, and we appeal and seek coverage through the appeals process. That's how it happens more and more now because their reaction to everything is to deny coverage. And again, we look at the options, but it's really based on how much care they need. They're only going to pay for in-home care if it's cheaper. What happens if we split time between summer and winter residents? Well, it depends on where you would want to be if you needed long-term care. In other words, I might split time between Massachusetts and Florida, but if I'm going to go into long-term care, uh, where do I want to be? Do I want to be in Mass or do I want to be in Florida? And we look at the state that you want to be in, and from there, we determine which rules that we're going to seek to follow, depending on which state that you want to end up in, for lack of a better term. What happens to an unmarried partner when both partners own a house with rights of survivorship? Will the unmarried partner lose their home? Does this ever happen? So that's a question from Julia. Julia, with a plan, this can be prevented. I actually have a case right now where I'm doing the exact same thing. I've got unmarried partners. They own a home in Belmont together. Gentleman is going into facility-based care. She is staying home. And I did the application to get him approved for long-term care in the facility while maintaining her interest in the home. She can live in the home. The home can't be sold unless she decided she wanted to sell it. So it's something I deal with very, very frequently. And so if done right, no, they cannot kick this person out of their home. What if your Social Security is higher than $2,000? Are you automatically disqualified? So that's a question from Denise. So Denise, no, you're not automatically disqualified from long-term care benefits if your Social Security is higher than $2,000. Medicaid Mass Health uses your income to determine a copayment. And so it's an amount that you have to contribute towards the facility every month, and then they pay the rest. So if you've got Social Security and X amount of dollars, they can make you pay some of that towards nursing home care and they pay the rest. But some of it can also be used to help maintain a home or keep a spouse at home. There is a link in the chat box there are some more questions. I'm going to get to them, but there is a link in the chat box for how to book your session. And again, I am going to go over how you can book it. Easiest way is to call the office. That's to give us a call at 978-657-7437. But there is a link there in the chat box where you can book online as well. And there are some more questions that I want to answer. Let's see. I'm in a small business S corp and an employee of my own company. Can long-term care premiums be business expenses? Great question, Ramesh, who asked that question. Yes, absolutely. The long-term care premiums can be business expenses depending on what state you're in. Uh, and the answer can change a little bit, like it's depending on what state you're in, and there can also be a limit to how much you can deduct based on many other factors. Okay, but insurance that you get through the business typically can be a business expense and deductible as a business expense. If long-term care benefits are not used at all, will that insurance company pay a lump sum amount to the beneficiary? Another great question, Ramesh. In a typical long-term care insurance, the answer is no. If you pay into long-term care insurance, but you never go into long-term care or you don't use it all and you die, your family doesn't get anything. It's one of the reasons I don't like traditional long-term care insurance, is because if you die, they don't pay out. If you use the life insurance option where you're accessing your death benefit early, and this is the option I like better, and you pass away, whatever's left on the death benefit still gets paid out to your beneficiaries. Ronald, does a trust get filed with the Registry of Deeds if the house is in trust? So great question. We do not file the entire trust with the Registry of Deeds because that's a private instrument, a private document. We don't want anyone to be able to see that, right? To be able to see who you're leaving your assets to. So we don't file the full trust with the Registry of Deeds. What we do instead is we file what's called a trustee certificate. It's very, very basic information about the trust and who the trustees are. And by filing that, we're able to put our house in trust without making your entire trust a public document. You mentioned that long-term care insurance premiums can go up. They are not fixed, and that's absolutely true. There are lots of different types of policies out there. There are some older ones that have long-term care premiums that are fixed, but they're very rare. Again, most of the time they can go up, and like I said, I'm not a fan of those policies. If you have one from a long time ago, great, but it's not something I'd go shopping for now. You also mentioned, Ronald, mentioned hybrid annuities is another option. And again, there are lots of different insurance products that can help you pay towards long-term care. You know, an annuity is just a way to supplement your income, and you can use those annuities to help pay towards long-term care as well. So great point, Ronald, that you mentioned. And then let's see, Ramesh. I do have long-term care hybrid and an estate plan, but still wanted to come for the strategy session to see if these can be improved. So we do that very, very frequently. We'll review trusts for clients. If the trust is more than 10 years old, I can almost guarantee you that it doesn't take advantage of the modern tools. There are certain tools that we have at my firm that you can't get anywhere else that we can offer as add-ons or augments to a trust. The other thing is, sometimes people think they have a trust that protects them from long-term care, and when I review it, I see that it provides no long-term care protection whatsoever under the current rules. So very common for us to review an existing trust. If it's great, we're going to tell you it's great and not to touch it, not to do anything with it. But we're going to tell you if it's got pros and cons, we're going to tell you what they are. And if there's things that need to be fixed, we're going to tell you how to fix them. And looks like the last question. If I move to a different state after my plan is implemented, how involved is it to amend the plan? So first of all, most of the time you don't have to amend the plan at all, okay? A plan that you do here in Massachusetts is going to be good in any other state in the country. So most of the time you don't have to amend the plan at all. We have colleagues all over the country that work in other states. So if we've got a client moving to another state, we'll talk to one of our colleagues just to see if there are any specific state nuances for that state. But most of the time, you don't have to do you don't have to do any amending at all. So that looks to be the end of the questions. So real quick, for those of you that are attending, this webinar is part of a series. So those of you that maybe attended our webinar a few weeks ago and now this one and are looking to attend the next webinar in the series, the next webinar is estate planning for families with special needs. We have to be super, super careful about how we leave assets to someone that has special needs. If we do it wrong, we can do them more harm than good. And by harm, I mean causing them to lose government benefits. And they're just poof, they're gone if you don't do this right. So, super important. That webinar is going to be on Wednesday, October 15th at 12 o'clock. Anybody that's interested in signing up for that can give a call to the office and we can get you signed up. Or you can go to our website, MLaw Seminars, and you can sign up there. So to book that free strategic planning session, again, you can call the office. All right. The other thing that you can do is you can scan that QR code that's on the screen. I'm not the most tech savvy guy in the world, so when you get into things like QR codes, you can get a little bit beyond me. But you can scan that if you open up your phone and you open up the camera and point the camera at that QR code, it's going to give you a little link that you can click and you can book your planning session online. Honestly, the easiest way is to call the office 978 487 5219. You can call that number and we'll get you set up. When you've got when you do it by phone, we're able to pull the calendar up, look at different options, squeeze you in places. So you might have, you'll get more options for the appointment than what you can get online. The online version is very structured. You can use both, but we do recommend that you call. We do tend to get a lot of calls after our webinars. So if for any reason you call and you have to leave a message, just leave a message, say that you attended the webinar today, give us a way to call you back, and we will call you back. One of the things that my firm does that I make sure we always, always, always do is we get back to people. All right. One of the biggest complaints about attorneys in the United States is, hey, my lawyer never calls me back. We will get back to you. So if you call and you have to leave a message, that's okay. Just state on the message that you attended the webinar, you want to book the session, leave us a way to get back to you, and we'll go ahead and do that. We will call you back. Again, there is a link in the chat box as well, or you can scan this QR code. The other thing that you can do is go to bookmyplanningsession.com. You can do it that way to book online. Again, the $450 fee is waived for anybody that's attended the webinar, and then once we go through the session, if we determine that we're a fit to work together, that we're a fit for you and you're a fit for us, you do get $500 off of the cost of your plan. All of our plans are done at flat rates. We don't bill these things hourly. You pay a 50% deposit and you pay the other 50% when you come in to sign your documents. So thanks everybody for joining today. Hope that that everyone got some good information out of it. If you're on the fence about this, like I said, come in for the planning session. I guarantee you that you're going to get value out of it. Come in and see us, and we're going to walk you through what your options are. Thanks again so much for joining. Chris, thanks for the kind words that you threw into the chat. I appreciate it. Come and see us. Let us take some of that burden away from you. Walk out of here a little lighter than you walked in. Thanks again so much.